Put anything in?
Introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I am 18 years old, and I was addicted to heroin for 3 years. And I had gotten high for a total of 5 years of my life. Started using when I was 13. I was in junior high. I was a straight A student. I did very well in school. I played a lot of sports. I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities and was around my friends all the time. You know, one of those just out and about, pretty much the in crowd in school, you know. And when I was 13, I had a friend of mine down the street, his older brother, who was I think 17 at the time, was smoking weed, and I had my friend tell me about it, and I was just like, oh, okay, you know, that's cool, you know, thinking, all right, that's awesome, let's try it. And I fell in love with it right there on the spot. I mean, I fell in love with it, but like the first time I did get high, I went home crying and I told my mom because I was very upset with myself, right? And I mean, but then like after I like calmed down and I was thinking about it, I'm like, this is awesome, you know, and I started smoking weed every day and did that for a while. Then within a few months, I was popping pills on a daily basis. I was Xanax, Klonopin, Oxycontin, Vicodin, Percocet, whatever I could get my hands on. I mean, even if it didn't get me high, if I didn't know what it was and I just knew it was a pill, I was going to take it. And at 14, I did cocaine for the first time. It was a different experience. I didn't like that one so much, but I did it anyway because it made me feel good. And then at 15, I started doing heroin. That one for me, it was my baby pretty much. Whenever I got clean, it was kind of like losing a best friend in all honesty. And I snorted it for maybe 2 or 3 months. I did eventually start doing it IV. The first time I ever shot up, I didn't even do it myself. I had passed out on the floor at a party, and my boyfriend at the time thought it would be cool to put it in my arm and do it, and I woke up in the middle of it, and I was just like, you know, what are you doing? And I let him do it, you know, I was just like, okay, and that was a turning point in me right there. Like, I completely shut down every part of my life. I mean, at this point, I'm failing everything in school. I no longer even have the same friends. I don't associate with them. They don't want anything to do with me. I'm never around my family because as soon as I would get home from school, I would run down to my room, go get high one more time, pass out for a couple hours, and get up and leave. And my parents trusted me. They had no idea. They didn't find out I was getting high until a week before my 17th birthday. I had almost overdosed at school. They had actually called the ambulance because they thought I had. But luckily, I had not at that point, and, you know, that's when my parents found out, and even then they were still in denial, swore I didn't have a problem, and, you know, it was just the one time I had never done it before in my life, and they put me in an outpatient treatment center. That outpatient treatment center where I went, my counselor I had allowed us to get high as long as we weren't doing our drug of choice, and he did get fired for that, and he can no longer be a counselor because he did get caught eventually, but as long as I wasn't doing opiates, since heroin was my drug of choice, I could get high. So I never stopped using. My parents thought I was clean. I had a paper every week with a signature saying I passed for everything. And so my parents thought I was okay, and whenever he got fired, I told my mom I didn't know why, and I just didn't feel comfortable going anymore because I'd already graduated. I was just going for the aftercare to get that paper signed so I could prove to my parents I was still clean. And whenever he got fired, I explained to my parents, you know, he helped me get clean. You know, I'm just feeding them a bunch of stuff, all lies. I was saying, you know, he helped me get clean. I don't feel comfortable with anybody else. I don't want to be there anymore. And she made me stop going. She let me stop going. I didn't have to go. I mean, I went back one more time to see how it was going to be, and as soon as I walked in the door, the counselor looked at me and said, "You're going to drop," and I'm like, "No, I'm not," and I left. And then I waited a few months because, you know, I did have a problem, and I knew it. Because, I mean, I had heard people talking, and, you know, I realized I had a problem when no one wanted to be around me because I would be so messed up and no one wanted to hang out with me. It doesn't matter if I had money, if I had a full tank of gas, my car, if I wanted to go to the city, it didn't matter. No one wanted to be around me because I couldn't stop. And I went back, and because the outpatient, what the counselor who was letting us get high had told me, You could go back, you could stop going and then just all of a sudden come back. Well, when I went back, it had been about 4 months, and I had found out you have to go at least once every 30 days. So they told me to leave, and I kept going, and at this point, I had gotten expelled when I overdosed at school, and while I was back in school, this was fall of last year, I didn't get high at school for my first week there, because I was terrified. I thought I was going to get kicked out again, and I really wanted to graduate, and I went back, and, well, after the first week I was in school, I was getting high at school again. I mean, I got high before school. I would leave about an hour before school started and just go, I'd make a run to the city and come back. And I live over in Illinois, so, I mean, I was driving about 45 to 50 minutes just to make a dope run. Even if I only had 20 bucks in my pocket, I was gone. And I did that pretty much every morning before school, and then I got out of school. I was in the early release program, and I got out of school early, and I did the same thing after school. I got to the point I was shooting up in the bathroom stalls at the school. I couldn't make it more than a couple hours without either getting nauseous, actually getting sick. I'd get hot, cold flashes. I was, I guess, bad off, which we all were, you know? And finally, in November, I tried to get clean on my own. I didn't tell anybody. The first time, I made it about a day. And then from there, I could only make it a couple hours at a time. And I had to continue doing what I was doing. And it didn't matter what it was. If I couldn't get dope, which is heroin for me, I would do something else. As long as I was out, blacked out, and didn't remember anything, that's all I wanted. And I finally, I kept going on for a few more months, and finally, January 30th of this year, I went to my assistant principal on my own accord, and I told her, I was like, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. I need to tell my parents. I don't know how to do it. Well, we called my mom together, and she asked if I was under the influence, and I told her yes. And, you know, so technically they could have expelled me right there. But she just had my mom come and pick me up because she knew I wanted to graduate. And she just kind of brushed it under the table. And I was leaving for treatment the next day. I really wanted to go to school that last day because I knew I wasn't going to be hanging out with any of the people I was, you know, the few people I could even associate with that would put up with me and my crap. And I wanted to go to say goodbye because I knew I wasn't going to be hanging out with them when I got back from treatment. And my mom didn't want me to, but my assistant principal talked to her and told her she thought it was going to be okay. Well, I'd given my mom pretty much everything I had. I gave her over $200 worth of drugs, except for I kept some for myself so I could get through the next day at school. And I don't think I'd been that messed up ever at that point in my life. And I looked at one of my teachers and I told him I was going to miss being high in his class the most because it was my favorite. And that I was going to treatment and I didn't have to do my homework anymore. You know, and I remember the look on the man's face. That's about all I can remember of it. But I did speak at my high school and I did get to apologize for that because it was his first year teaching. And poor man. Yeah, poor man. And anyway, well, they searched my vehicle. I had possession, and I caught a felony possession case at the school, and they could have given me a DUI because I had driven on school property and all that, but luckily, they dropped that and brushed it under the table. My mom was still in complete denial about the fact that I was using. She kept thinking, no, it's Courtney. Courtney doesn't do this, and I mean, I was one of those, I didn't steal the spoons from my house. At the Walmart in my town, they sell a bundle of 10 spoons for $1. So when I happened to have that extra $1 after I got my fix and I had the money, I would go I would go buy a pack of spoons. And I've had spoons with me all the time. Over in Illinois, they have clean needle exchanges. You can get needles for free. And I was up there almost on a daily basis because, I mean, I didn't like sharing with people. And I'd give them out to people because I didn't want anybody else sharing. I mean, because I did hit one point, I was sharing needles with people I knew had Hep C because I wanted to get high so bad. And I didn't have one. I knew they had Hep C, and I continued to do it. And luckily, I did not contract it, and I'm grateful for that every day. I went to treatment, and I was really happy to be there. I mean, my first week, obviously not withdrawals. But from there, I was really happy, and I met you there. You were at one of the meetings that they brought in there. I remember you. I was very belligerent. My first week, I put a couple holes in the walls. Whenever I got arrested at school, I went after my principal. When I started going through withdrawals, I was very violent, and I was not usually a violent person. And Well, I got out of treatment and it was great. I stayed clean for 32 days when I got out, and when I would have had 61 days total clean, I decided I wanted to get high to celebrate the fact that I had 60 days clean. And I had a sponsor at this point, and I called her and I told her, and I used for about 4 days. And I called her, I told her, and she didn't feel comfortable with me driving down to the city to go to meetings by myself, so she had me go with her son, who was also in the program. And her son looked at me and told me as long as I wasn't doing heroin, he didn't care if I got high with him. So we got high together. And this went on for about a month. And then my mom, well, it was actually my dad. He noticed that I was isolating again. I ran to my room as soon as I walked in the door because my parents live on the ground level. I was in the basement, and nobody goes down there because all that's down there is my room and a bathroom. So no one was ever down there, which made it very easy for me to get high. And well, my mom and dad noticed it, and I came home one night, and my mom surprised me with a drug test. She was like, go in the bathroom, and I was like, ooh, great, you know. Thinking I was gonna try to be slick, you know, it obviously didn't work. They caught me, and they put me on lockdown at home for a little bit so I could get through the withdrawals, because if not I would run down to the city. And it was so bad I couldn't even like hold myself up. I couldn't stand really without collapsing because my muscles were just falling apart. And I was clean for 18 days. I went to a meeting, and I was feeling really good about it, and I was having a personal situation with someone who was at the meeting, and they brought it up in the meeting. And for me, that pissed me off, and I left the meeting. And I went and I called the last two people I'd gotten high with, and we all went out together. We'd all been clean. And that night I overdosed. I had stopped at a Moto Mart. We were here in the city because that's where they lived in the city. And we went over to Illinois for the needle exchange to go pick up some needles. And so we were in Belleville, Illinois, and we'd stopped at the Moto Mart right there. And me and his girlfriend went into the women's bathroom, and then he went to the men's bathroom. And we got high, and I remember I walked the key inside, and I fell off the curb because I was stumbling, and I fell and I had busted my head open. And I didn't even realize it until I got to the hospital later. But I tried to walk and pretend like everything was fine. And I realized I was not going to be okay to drive. So I gave someone my keys, and they looked at me and they're like, are you okay? And I said, yes. And the next thing I remember, I woke up in a hospital. I had no idea where I was at, how I got there, what had happened. I found out after I'd woken up I had overdosed. They weren't really sure, but I was dead when I got to the hospital, and the people I was with, gratefully, they took me to the hospital because, you know, a lot of times people just dump the bodies. And I'm very grateful they didn't. I was dead when I got there. That was my bottom for me. That's where I was done. It scared me. They told me I was dead when I got to the hospital, and they told me they weren't gonna call the police. Well, the police showed up, and I got very worked up and overwhelmed, and I passed out, and I died again. And they had to give me more of, Narcan. Yeah, and they had to give me another shot of that. And I ended up getting arrested again. I got put on probation for my charges at that school the 2 days after that. I got arrested again. I left against medical advice, and then waited for my parents to get there, and it turned into a big mess, and I'm still waiting on those charges. I mean, there's a chance, even now, being almost 6 months clean, I could still go to jail for what I did. I mean, and that's a scary feeling, but I know as long as I stay clean, it's going to be okay. I mean, this is something, it's affecting everybody, because, like, my childhood was a lot like Savannah's. We were talking about it. Outside, you know, I didn't have a dysfunctional family. My parents are still together. No abuse or anything like that. You know, it affects all levels of your life, or of life, not even yours, but everybody. I mean, you can be like some CEO of some company, or, you know, anything, and, you know, no one sees it. And no one sees it happening to you, like, personally, like, in your life, unless they really watch. Like, my parents had no idea. I was never home. When I was, I'd be higher than a kite, didn't want anything to do with anybody, and I wanted to be in my room, getting higher. And, I mean, a lot of things to look for are the pupils being dilated, track marks, if they're wearing hoodies a lot, like, especially when it starts getting warmer, then hoodies really aren't that appropriate. So you'll probably see them. Things going missing. I was pawning stuff out of my parents' house all the time. My parents still allow me to live with them, and that's awesome. But I mean, and I let the pawn shop take everything. The only thing I ever got out of pawn, and my parents don't even know that I even did this. I pawned my parents' wedding rings, and they still don't know that I ever did it. But that's the only thing I ever got out of pawn, and I put it right back as soon as I was done. And I mean, they still to this day don't know that. And I mean, that's something I'm gonna have to tell them eventually. But right now, I'm kind of good with where I'm at. But I mean, you're gonna, if you see someone doing this person's going to be lying, cheating, stealing, violent sometimes, irritable. I mean, I know with me, I was angry all the time. It didn't matter what was going on. I was angry at the world, and I had a bad attitude with everybody. Just, I guess, spoons missing. I mean, I personally never stole spoons, but spoons missing, the dilated pupils, and like the glassy eyes, track marks. Just behaviors. I mean, because I was a straight A student until I hit high school, and then I started, all of a sudden I had D's and F's and all this, and I mean, I didn't get to graduate, and I wouldn't have graduated anyway, even without my expulsion, because of how bad my grades were at that point. I mean, I could have, but it would have been like a whole year later. And I mean, I guess just watch for that stuff and talk to your kids. That's a big one. I mean, my parents did talk to me, but they also thought that the DARE program was enough. And I don't believe, in my opinion, DARE doesn't really cover enough to actually explain. And I know with our DARE officer, they emphasized weed and how that was the worst thing ever. So once I did that, what was wrong with anything else? And I guess that's all I really got.
Okay, we gotta stop. Thank you so much. Yeah, go.
There was one thing I wanted to say. With this organization that we're talking about, it's St. Louis Heroin Help. You can go to the website at stlouisheroinhelp.org. If you're on Facebook, it's St. Louis Heroin Help. You can go like it there. There's also a page, it's a Good Samaritan 911. That's on Facebook. And that's going to be legislation that we're trying to get enacted through Missouri, which is going to hopefully, it's going to remove some of the problems if heroin addicts or someone overdosing calls the police, or calls 911 because you're overdosed. A lot of people are afraid to call 911 because they're afraid that they're going to pick up a case. Yeah. It's going to grant you limited immunity if there's drugs on the scene. The police are going to take the drugs, but you're not going to get locked up because you're doing the right thing. Also, we're trying to get a Narcan law passed, which Narcan is the antidote for opiate overdoses, and we also want to try and get a Prescription Drug Monitoring Act passed because there's a lot of doctor shopping going on.
So we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So if you want to help us out, we're going to be having more volunteers.
And if you know somebody who you may be going through this, or you personally, just anybody, go to this organization, this website, stlouisheroinhelp.org, and send them our way, because, you know, awareness and getting these people some help, because they're not alone, obviously. So, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks a whole lot. Okay, so she's got the rest. I need you three to come with me, please. For
Okay.